Hey guys, what up, what up? What is good? How have you guys been doing the past couple of weeks? Here, things have been good, but really busy. I got a new car, so that's exciting. I love her. And then mentally, I think I've just been kind of preparing myself for my daughter to head off to college. I never knew that empty nesting was actually a thing, but I'm here to tell you. It's definitely real.
And it kind of sucks. It's uncomfortable.
But my bad. If you've never clicked on one of my videos before, you're probably asking yourself, who is this chick whining about getting older? Well, hello. Welcome to the channel. My name is Desiree, and on Criminally Focused, my focus is actually on spreading awareness about unsolved murders and missing people. We also talk about injustices that are happening or have happened in law enforcement or within the American justice system. So I know, kind of like a broad focus, but basically I make these videos in an effort to help victims, families, and communities find the justice that they're looking for. I mean, absolutely no harm to anyone that we talk about, and I always encourage you to do your own research to form your own opinions. In fact, anytime I make a video, in the description box, you'll always find links to the sources that I've used, just in case you want to do your own research. Oh, and just because I always forget to say this, if you're interested in finding me online, I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And I occasionally post there. So you should come say hi if you want. And if you like hanging out with me, talking to me about ways that we can focus on helping our community, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's totally free and it would help me out huge. Okay, enough uncomfortable self-marketing. Let's talk about the real reason that we're here today. Today, we're going to be talking about the abduction and the murder of 15-year-old Marilee Burt. And if you happen to watch my last video, you're going to notice that once again, we're headed to my neck of the woods, Littleton, Colorado. And this video was actually recommended to me by somebody I've known for a very long time. One of my friend's dads who lived in the area at the time. And to be honest, I had never heard of Marilee's story before he mentioned it. So I'm really glad that he did, because this case happened in February 1970. So this month, it's going to be 55 years since Marilee's murder, meaning 55 years that the killer has remained free from consequence of the pain and the fear that he caused throughout Littleton. Sadly, both of Marilee's parents died without ever knowing who killed their daughter. And if we're realistic, the killer might not even be alive anymore. I mean, it's been that long. Her family continues to fight for justice, and they deserve to know what happened to Marilee. So today, we're going to go over the timeline of the night that she disappeared, the investigation, and what happened after. I've got my coffee with like a hazelnut creamer in it. I got some comfy clothes on, and I'm ready to tell you Marilee's story. So now it's your turn. Sit back, get comfy, grab whatever you're drinking or smoking, and let's get right into it.
I want the family to be satisfied. I want them to know who did this.
Marilee Ruth Burt was born on January 25th, 1955, and as she grew up, she was described as being bright, ambitious, and absolutely beautiful. She lived in Columbine Valley, Colorado, with her parents and brothers. With only 480 residents in 1970, Columbine Valley was a pretty small community, And, it was located, if you want to look like on a map, it was located just right outside of Littleton, Colorado, in a place called unincorporated Arapahoe County. Originally, Columbine Valley was formed when a group of just 17 people bought a 295-acre farm and converted the area into a large golf course and then surrounded it by homes. Every time I make a video, the animals, they're like, "What up? Let me say hi." Woo woo. This is Luna. Okay, but anyways, so back to Columbine Valley. The first home was occupied in 1956, and by 1959, the town was incorporated and a mayor and board of trustees had been formed. Fun fact, the 1967 PGA Golf Tour actually took place at the golf course that was located within Columbine Valley. It was a beautiful area with expensive homes for wealthy families. Perfect for the PGA Tour and perfect for Marilee's family. Her grandfather, Nate Burt, was the owner of a popular car dealership in town called Burt Chevrolet, and her father was a general manager. And if you're from the area, you definitely have heard of Burt Chevrolet. Although her family would end up selling the dealership years later, in the 70s, it was one of the largest dealerships in Colorado. On the morning of February 26, 1970, 15-year-old Marilee woke up and got ready for school. She dressed in her green and yellow cheerleading outfit and put her hair in pigtails. Normally, she didn't really style her hair that way. Pigtails weren't really her thing, but she was excited about the school basketball game that was later that night, so I'm kind of just thinking she was trying to get all done up and cute for it. Marilee attended Goddard Middle School, which recently opened a couple years earlier in 1968. And just a side note, I think the grade structure of Goddard was just a little bit different in the 1970s than it is now. Currently, Goddard has grades 6 through 8, but it sounds like Marilee was in the 9th grade. I guess it's really not that important. All you really need to know is that Marilee attended Goddard and was in her final year. That day when she got to school, she met with her guidance counselor to talk about her upcoming year in high school and was really excited about joining the high school cheerleading team. It was kind of a big deal to her. Her counselor would later describe her as such a bright gal and said that she was such a pretty little thing. So that night, Marilee attended the school basketball game and she cheered on the sidelines as planned. However, after the game, she decided that before going home, she wanted to go over to one of her friends' houses, just hang out for a little while. When she was ready to head home, Marilee called her mom for a ride. According to the Denver Post, though, somehow there was a misunderstanding and her mom didn't realize that Marilee was at her friend's and not at the school anymore. So her mom headed to the school and parked outside to wait for her, and Marilee waited at her friend's house for her mom to pick her up. And since this was back in the days before cell phones, they weren't really able to communicate with each other, send each other texts to kind of find out what was going on. So after waiting around for a little while, Marilee just decided to walk the 1.5 miles home. I mean, it wasn't that far. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the thought that nothing bad could happen to you in a safe, quiet neighborhood was just as false back then as it is today. And I mean, we're talking about a time in U.S. history that's commonly referred to as the golden age for serial killers. We had Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, John Wayne Gacy, and countless other psychopaths roaming the streets. It was actually probably so common back then that there was probably a serial killer just chilling at your mom and dad's barbecue. So definitely not a safe time for anyone, much less young kids. Marilee gathered up her books, said her goodbye to her friend, and still wearing her cheerleading outfit, headed in the direction of her home. And sadly, this was the last time that her friend would ever see her. A few hours later, Marilee's family began to worry when she hadn't made it home yet. Initially, they headed out to search for her on their own, but not long after, they called the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department to report their daughter as missing. Officers immediately began canvassing the area, looking for signs of her or, any signs of a disturbance. They spent all night and the following morning searching, hoping to find her safely. But on February 27th, 1970, the day after vanishing, sadly, Marilee's body was found. Around 12 p.m., a Jefferson County road crew had been working in an area called Deer Creek Canyon, and they stumbled upon a pretty gruesome scene. 10 miles from where she disappeared and under a bridge half submerged in water, Marilee's naked body was found. A 10-foot rope was wrapped around her neck and her cheerleading outfit was missing. To this day, the outfit and any belongings that she had been carrying have never been found. The medical examiner would eventually rule that Marilee's cause of death had been strangulation. And although she had been hit in the head with like a heavy blunt object, her skull hadn't been fractured. So it was determined that she had probably been hit just hard enough to knock her unconscious. The medical examiner also determined that she had been assaulted. During the examination, several pieces of evidence were found on Marilee's body. Skin cells were found under her fingernails, wood splinters were on her body, and metal shavings were found in her hair. To investigators, the skin under her fingernails was a clear sign that she had put up a fight. The wood splinters and metal shavings might have signified that her body had been moved to some type of metal fabrication shop before, being assaulted and killed. News of the murder spread pretty quickly throughout the small community, and people were understandably terrified. An officer named Bruce Isaacson would end up working the case for years, and he would later say that every cop has a case that sticks with him, and for him, this was that case. He would go on to admit that after Marilee's murder, his family started to lock their doors. And I'm pretty sure the Isaacson family wasn't the only family to do so. I don't think a lot of families felt safe in Littleton, Colorado anymore. As the days turned into weeks, turned into months with no answers, some people began to wonder if Marilee's murder was connected to a murder that was unsolved and happened just 2 years earlier and only 5 miles away. And this was a murder of Constance Marie Paris, or Connie as she was commonly called. On March 26, 1968, Connie disappeared after getting off a bus in Englewood, Colorado. Investigators believe that she was attacked while she was walking home. Investigators think that she was attacked on Little Dry Creek Path near 3500 South Broadway. And then 5 days later, on March 31st, Connie's body was found on the side of the road off of West Kenyon Avenue between Sheridan and Lowell Boulevard. She was also found naked and had been assaulted. So to the public, 2 pretty teenage girls had been strangled and left naked on the side of the road, just 2 years apart. So without knowing, many of the details that would later be released, I can totally see why people thought that they could be connected. Focusing back on Marilee, I got kind of sidetracked. After her murder, police spoke with her family, as well as witnesses who had seen her walking home on the night that she disappeared. And one of these witnesses was actually a family member. It was her 16-year-old brother. Raymond told police officers that on the night that his sister disappeared, he actually thought that he might have driven past her on his way home. Apparently, that night, as he drove down Middlefield Road, he saw a young girl walking down the side of the street. And if you remember, Marilee's friend lived right off of Middlefield. So definitely plausible that she could have been walking home and he would have seen her off that road. But at first, he didn't think it was his sister because the girl had pigtails. And like I said earlier, Marilee never wore her hair in pigtails. Plus, she wasn't supposed to be walking home at night and it was dark, so he wasn't able to get the best look at her face. As he drove past the girl, he noticed a truck that was driving towards them in the other lane. As he passed, the truck began flashing its lights on and off and then pulled over on the side of the road next to the girl that had been walking. He described the truck as being a newer model made maybe between 1968 and 1970 and said that it was multicolored with a light top and a dark bottom. Fortunately for investigators, he was also able to get a quick view of the driver and described him as a white male, possibly between the ages of 30 to 40 years old. The man had dark hair with a receding hairline and square sideburns. Her brother said that as he continued to drive away, he could see the girl stop and talk to the man in the truck. But, he was driving, so eventually he got so far that he wasn't able to see what happened. After a few minutes of driving, though, he started to get an uneasy feeling that maybe the girl that he had seen was his sister. So he flipped around and drove back to the spot where he had seen her. However, by the time he got back there, the girl and the truck, they were no longer there. Their family has said that if Marilee stopped to talk to the person and actually got in the vehicle, then she probably knew them. Her brother would forever be haunted by this moment, telling Denver 7 that he wished that he would have stopped when he first saw the girl, and that the incident has played in his head on a loop, just over and over and over again. Police would go on to interview other people besides Marilee's brother. However, everyone pretty much told them the same thing. Multiple witnesses had seen a girl who fit Marilee's description walking down Berry Drive, Bowles Avenue, and Middlefield Road. After releasing the description of the vehicle, between 50 to 70 tips came into the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department. Some people reported seeing a similar looking truck in the area around 6:50 on the night of Marilee's disappearance. Others reported seeing a truck that had been pulled over on the side of the road talking to a girl around 6:45 p.m. And then some of the witnesses who had reportedly seen this truck talking to the girl actually said that at one point they saw the truck speed away so quickly that it almost ran a stop sign in the process. Obviously, in a huge hurry to get away. During their investigation, the police also looked into all of the known offenders in the area, but they were unable to find any type of similarities or any type of match that they made public anyways. Sadly, as time went on, the news began reporting less on the case, and eventually leads stopped coming in, which caused the case to grow cold. Even with the description of the suspect and the vehicle he drove that was released to the public, Marilee's killer remained free. And then in 1998, detectives who were looking over the case found a black hair, like a strand of black hair, on Marilee's items. And these items had been stored away in an evidence locker for years, just sitting there. By 1999, a DNA analysis had been done on everything that they found in the locker, and because of this, they were able to rule out a bunch of suspects, as well as family members. And these suspects included a offender who had crimes going back to 1955. They've never released his name, but apparently this man had been Marilee's volunteer gymnastic teacher, and at one time, he had been the prime suspect in her murder. Police said that this creep's MO was to find young, vulnerable girls and pick them up in his van and assault them. Apparently, while being interviewed by the police, he told them that during the time that he knew Marilee, he had, quote,
probably had feelings of wanting to have sex with her.
Like, gross dude and super sketchy. And remember the case that I had briefly mentioned earlier that people thought were connected, Connie Paris? Well, the DNA analysis also ruled out the idea that they could be connected. The DNA that was found in Marilee's case just wasn't a match to the one that was found in Connie's. And there isn't much information about Connie's death out there, but just know that it's still unsolved to this day. In February 2002, Detective Bruce Isaacson spoke with the Rocky Mountain News about the case and just expressed sadness that it hadn't been solved yet. He said that witnesses and suspects are getting older and dying, and this is probably our last chance. Detective Isaacson would go on to talk in his interview about how his partner and him had spoken to over 100 people since 1998, and they also hadn't ruled out the idea that more than one person was involved in the murder. In the month following the interview, police received over 40 tips, and although investigators said some of them were super helpful, they still haven't caught the killer. They said that some of these tips even gave them information about certain people that they had on their radar. However, they wouldn't really divulge to the public anything more than that. I guess investigators get about 6 tips a year regarding Marilee's murder, which I know, that doesn't really sound like a lot, but out of all of the colder cases that the county has, this one gets the most tips of them all. Marilee's mom literally spent the rest of her life searching for answers to who killed her daughter, and sadly in 2013, she passed away without finding them. And then in May of 2021, the Denver Metro Crime Stoppers increased the reward in the case to $30,000 in hopes that someone would come forward with information that would lead to an arrest.
Each step weighs a little heavier with each passing year.
Marilee Burt, 1955 to 1970.
Marin's aunt's murder rocked her family
Sadness.
and the Littleton community.
It took him a lot of years to be able to finally start talking about it.
Bert's dad was only a teenager, when his little sister was abducted.
Horrible for everybody. Absolutely horrible.
Raymond believes he was the last to see her as he drove home.
I saw a person walking.
But when he finally made the connection,
I went right back to that same spot, and she was gone. She had been abducted in a matter of maybe 5 minutes.
investigators questioned many, collected evidence, and then 15 years after her death, found DNA on her body. But until this day, no one has been charged with her murder.
Have some indicators that will help us identify a suspect. We're not revealing that information at this point because it's very critical to the case.
I'm hoping with the new technology, with the ancestry and the 23andMe and all the new sorts of data that they're collecting, that we'll be able to find who did this.
Help to heal their wounded hearts.
That's my dying wish. I hope to bring this to closure, and so she has closure and my grandmother has closure.
And that brings us to 2025. I guess the DNA that was found on Marilee's body still hasn't been connected to her killers, through like a local or federal database, like a DNA checker. However, with advancements in technology, the investigators remain hopeful that whoever's responsible for Marilee's murder will be brought to justice. If you have any information that can be helpful to solving Marilee's case, please contact the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office at 303-795-4711. Or you can send them an email at coldcase@arapahogov.com. All right, so tell me what you guys think. Do you think that more than one person was involved? I know that the DNA wasn't a match in the case of Connie Paris's, but do you think that somehow her case is still connected to Marilee's? I don't know, maybe there was more than one killer involved and they just got one of the DNAs from one of the DNA. I don't know what I'm thinking, but I guess I kind of just think that this was a crime of opportunity. Maybe the killer drove up and pretended to be a cop, so when he offered to drive her home, she felt comfortable getting in his truck. Or maybe she knew the killer. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. I always like hearing what you guys have to say. Sometimes you make me think of things that I've never even considered. But please like and share this video so Marilee's story is heard. If you watch other channels like mine, just an idea, also tell those creators about Marilee's story. Maybe someone with a really big audience will pick it up and get the word out there. That would be fantastic. And that's one way we can help on this channel. So, all right, guys. Thank you for still being here and coming to hang out with me. I hope you like the vibe here and that you'll hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and join me in my upcoming videos. Until next time, guys, stay safe and stay focused. Bye.